Okay, everybody, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the iProduce Agribusiness Hub. Today, we're going to have a session on the beef value chain. Before our first speaker comes, I'd like to first just say a little bit about iProduce. So basically, iProduce is an agribusiness digital platform that was created to provide entrepreneurs the tools needed to succeed in agribusiness. The initiative was conceived by Inara Foundation, and the objective is to create a virtual agribusiness ecosystem that would basically provide all the information with regards the value chains, with regards where suppliers, where buyers, also linking buyers and sellers. Essentially, what we want to do is to provide capacity and also to bring interest, create market linkages so that agriculture will become more of a business than sustenance, engagement in sustenance. So we have so far had a few webinars, and the results have been quite impressive. We've executed a few projects. We've managed to link some buyers and sellers, etc. And it's looking quite exciting. What we're going to do today, without wasting too much time, is discuss the beef value chain. We know that this is a topic that is extremely important in Nigeria, and we also know that we've had challenges with regards cattle rustling, cattle farmers, and it all has to do with moving from animals from one part of the country to another. So if you listen to this webinar, you would understand that a lot of the practices are quite archaic, and that there are ways that we can address these, have solutions to this problem. And perhaps if we zero into looking into the value chains and get involved in aspects of the value chain, then we might be able to solve this problem. So value chains are now the way that people or businesses, agribusiness is done. You essentially pick an area along the value chain and you focus and specialize on that. And that way other people will also link up with other aspects of value chain. So this is what it is. I'm sure that by the time we finish this webinar, you'll understand what a value chain is, you'll understand what the beef value chain is, and you'll also understand the opportunities. So aside from being a herds person, a herdsman, or you can actually do as animal husbandry, you can do so much. There's a lot of opportunity. So I hope you enjoyed this session with us today, and thank you again for joining. I'm going to hand over to Farida Aminu. Farida is our coordinator, and she will introduce the first speaker, who is going to speak for an hour. Well, sorry, for about 20 minutes. The speaker is from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. And the reason why we have a speaker from the ministry is because we want to, first of all, understand the projects, the programs, and the policies the government has with regards to beef value chain. And secondly, at the end of the first session, we'll have question and answers, and then we will go to the second session, which is going to be a private sector perspective. In other words, from a business angle, how do you key into the value chain? So in other words, we're going to do policy and also business of actually along the value chain. I hope you enjoy this. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Farida, I'm handing over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Good morning, distinguished guests. My name is Farida, and I'll be introducing the speakers. Thank you once again for joining us. We have the speaker's profile, please. Okay, thank you. So we have our first speaker, and he's Hakeem Ibilade. Hakeem is the Deputy Director, Department of Animal Husbandry Services, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. He also heads the Division of Commercial Ruminants and Dairy Production, which is charged with coordinating the beef value chain and halal meat processing, dairy value chain, sheep and goat value chain, and the leather value chain. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for joining us here today.
Good morning, all. Can you hear me?
Good morning, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. I greet you once again. Good morning. You are welcome to this panel discussion. Sorry, I have to rush down to the office. The network in my home is not very good. That's why I have to rush things up a bit. Exploring business opportunities in the beef value chain in Nigeria. My name, you have heard. So we go straight to the presentation. What is the background to beef cattle production in Nigeria? Because everything starts with production of cattle. And we all know the traditional way of production, which cannot sustain the demand for beef in the country at the moment. This has been going on for a very long time, doing it traditionally, creating gaps that has to be filled by importation of meat and meat products in various forms, not limited to beef. But to just guide ourselves, I said beef is the meat derived from cattle, either of dairy or pure meat breeds. That means there are two different breeds. There are the pure line for beef, and there's the one from dairy. That's the male animals and the spent cow. Beef is the most important and most popular of all red meat. And the main production system in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa is the pastoral nomadic or semi-nomadic system, which I've just mentioned. Then when we talk about beef, when we talk about the animal, we want to look at the type of animal we can say give us beef. And when you want to look at them, you look at them not from the eyes of African or a Nigerian. We have been looking at them from the eyes of European. And of course, we have those ones that conform to the European standard in Nigeria here. They may not look like elephants, they may not be so big, but they can meet our needs. Out of these breeds, we have the Ndama, we have the White Fulani or the Bunaji, we have the Sokoto Gudali, Adamawa Gudali, the Muturu, and the Kuri. All these are in different parts of Nigeria. Time will not allow me to dwell on this. Like the Ndama, you can find in the forest zones in the southern part of Nigeria. The White Fulani or the Bunaji is almost everywhere in Nigeria. I can survive anywhere. Same thing for Sokoto Gudali. Adamawa Gudali is to the northeast. The Muturu is a southern breed. The Kuri is the northeast. Then you have those breeds that do not really conform to what you can call the beef breed. That means they cannot convert feed as fast as the earlier ones I've mentioned. Under this one, you have the Rahaji, you have the Shua Arab, and you have the Keteku. These three, it doesn't mean they cannot be used as beef animals. What it means is they have lower meat grade by European standards, and they have slower conversion rates when you want to go into business using these breeds. Then we quickly go into the organized beef cattle production in Nigeria. Apart from the one we are used to that has been on for centuries, which is tying down animals and feeding them in the backyard, we have those that are government enabled. And several attempts have been made to introduce the European type of semi-intensive and intensive cattle production systems, such as ranching and feedlots. These were popularized, starting from the colonial period to the post-independence era. Notable among them was the introduction of imported trypanotolerant bulls and steers in southwestern Nigeria in the 1960s. Then we had the establishment of ranches for production of genetically improved winners for small producers. That's the Mokwa Cattle Ranch in present-day Niger State, 1972. And we have the Manchok in present Kaduna State and the Bauchi Mid-Country. These are just the notable ones. There are various attempts. Then we have the World Bank assisted projects, which was the first livestock development project and the second livestock development project. These were cited in Oyo and Enugu states. They were the establishment of cattle breeding and improvement centers by the Federal Department of Livestock then and various state governments. There were so many livestock improvement centers. There were other components, which were the development of grazing reserve and settling of nomadic pastoralists. But these attempts that were made in the past, they were mostly characterized by failure. Failure because they were government-led. They were not private sector-led. And the only advantage or gain that Nigeria could say they got from this was that awareness was created, that investments could be made in the beef value chain or in the beef business. Let me use that word, not value chain, in the beef business. People then had the opportunity of accessing credit facilities, especially under the first and second livestock development program, which was aided by the World Bank. But as soon as the World Bank withdrew the facilities, you saw everything collapsed. So what are the lessons we learned from this? From these past interventions from government? Number one was there was lack of adequate sustainability plan after the expiration of the second livestock development plan facility, just like I said earlier. Development of grazing reserves and settling of nomadic pastoralists only partially successful due to poor management of common properties. These properties were provided by government. They didn't belong to anybody. Then there was absence of entrepreneurial skills in provision of quality feeds for beef cattle and feedlots, productive breeds of beef cattle, adequate healthcare, and so on and so forth. That's under input supply. Entrepreneurs were not encouraged. Entrepreneurs they had limited scope. Then there was poor transportation and logistics system for live animals and cold chain products. Another lesson was lack of organized structured market of finished live animals and commodities, like certified abattoirs and processing plants, standardization of animals and commodities for correct pricing regime, and so on and so forth. So how do we now turn these failures or challenges or failures to challenges? We make our failures the challenges, then we turn these challenges to possibilities. That is exploring the business opportunities in the beef value chain in Nigeria. Number one, what is beef value chain? The beef value chain are the various business activities and processes involved in creating beef value products or beef cattle products or performing beef cattle related services. They can be products oriented, they can be services oriented. Then I go further, I said the beef value chains are the linked group of people and processes by which a specific commodity is supplied to the final consumer. Then the value chains have inputs that are used to produce and transport a commodity towards a consumer, that is the supply chain. That means it has the production component, it has the supply component. Then the value chain encompasses more than the production processes, just like I said. Value chains as a term implies a lot of information and incentives between the people involved. That means it links a whole lot of people arriving at a final product or arriving at a final service. So from this, I now try and put a diagram that takes off from the inputs to the market, or rather to the consumer. This is the beef value chain. It's very simple diagram of it, or a very simple, for want of a better word, how the services or the products flow from inputs. Under inputs, we have the feed. We will explain this in a more elaborate form. This is just a diagram to show that this is how the value chain looks like. And embedded in this are cut across issues like the government policies, finance, the right environment for investment to thrive, and so on and so forth. But this is just the simple diagram of the beef value chain. So along this value chain are the key points of the value chain. So the figure above describes a typical beef value chain and provides a broad characterization of main areas of investment opportunities along the chain. Number one is input, like I mentioned. Number two is production. Number three is processing and distribution. Number four is marketing. So we look at these specific investment areas. Under input supply, the semen, like part of the problems we've been having are that our animals take long before they mature for market. If you take a Sokoto Gudali, for instance, you spend up to 3 to 4 years. That's giving it every other thing being equal, feeding, water, good housing, and all. 3 to 4 years before it could get to the market. But if you now use improved semen, you can shorten this. It's under input supply. People who sell just the semen, they have all the paraphernalia for preserving the semen, for it to be wholesome for use by the breeder or by the farmer. Then feeder calves or steers. This talk to people who are in the feedlots. They are not expected to produce the cows, they want to fatten. So they get from people who are entrepreneurs in this business. They raise just the steers or the cows for feedlots. Then you have those who are in feed, like pasture, concentrates, and so on and so forth, feed related. Then logistics services, the animal husbandry person, the veterinarian, equipment and machinery hiring, capacity building, finance, transportation. All these are enablers for the above 1, 2, 3. That's the semen, the feeder cows, the feed, and all those. You need logistics to push them. It's not expected that the person who produced the feed or who is selling the feed will be the one that will be carrying the feed from his store or from his shop, as the case may be, to the user. There is somebody in between is providing service. The semen is not just going to get to the animal. You need the veterinarian or the animal husbandry person to do it. There are the equipments you'll be using. Maybe you want to do land clearing, you want to process your feed and all. These are machinery that somebody can set up and hire out to people who will be using it. Because you cannot have all the equipments on the farm as a producer, as a processor, or as a marketer. Next slide. The specific investment area has continued. We go to production. Under production, we have the cow-calf operation. Can be cows, can be weaners, can be yearlings, can be heifers, can be steers, and so on along that line. Somebody can set up a business under production that I want to be involved in the cow-calf operations only. Mine is to just raise them up to a certain age and sell off. Then we have the artificial insemination and establishment of livestock management system, including traceability. The service provider, that's the person who does the artificial insemination, goes around. This is his line of business. He inseminates, he waits to see that the insemination has succeeded before handing over to the farmer. He tags the animal and registers the animal to be able to trace, to be able to measure the performance and to be able to trace the animal wherever it goes off the farm or even on the farm. Then we have those who produce feed themselves. This is still under production. They produce pasture. We see people who cut pasture along the road and take to cattle market. They didn't grow this pasture, but we say entrepreneurs can now come in, sow this pasture and sell. Just follow the pattern. The people who go along the road, especially during the rainy season, and feed to cattle that are inside the cattle market or crowd. Then we have the processed pasture, like hay, like silage, like pelletized pasture. All these are processed pasture. Then we have the processed crop residues, the residues that are left on the farm. We just add value to it by doing what we call the crude processing and bag it and sell to farmers. Then we have ruminant concentrates or feeds. There are companies that are coming up now that are producing concentrates, that are producing ruminant feed for fattening purposes or to satisfy other areas of cattle production. The feeds, these are many, the additives and all. These are areas, this is a point where people could invest in. Then we have the veterinary care. All farms may not or cannot afford to keep a veterinarian on the farm. But a veterinarian can set up his business and service as many farms as he could handle. Next slide. Specific investment area, we now go to processing and distribution. Under this processing and distribution, we have the primary beef products in shops. That is the fresh meat. People have been doing it. The way they display it in the abattoir, if you go to the abattoir, sometimes you may not want to eat meat again, or the meat market. We need entrepreneurs here. Entrepreneurs can come in here and set up meat shops that will produce, that will sell fresh meat to the people. Take from the abattoir, you set up your meat shop, and you get your line of customers. Then we go to packaging and processing. That's another point there. Frozen beef, value-added meat products like the Nigerian shish kebab, which is the suya, and barbecued beef, the balangu, dried beef, kilishi, shredded beef, nambunama, veal. Veal, we see it in shops like ShopRite and other chain stores. Is actually beef that has not got to 6 months before it goes to the market. They feed them mainly on milk, just milk. So it gives you white meat. This is a specialized area that somebody who is in processing can invest in. Then we have the corn beef. We see it in the chain stores too. It can be produced here. Somebody can go into this and invest in it and supply these chain stores or even supply other markets. Then further processing, like we find in meat pies, pastries, and others in the culinaries. Then of course, logistics and the wholesalers. Next slide. Marketing. You can set up supermarkets, restaurants, food service suppliers. These food service suppliers, this came up very strongly during COVID-19. When you now see people through telephone get customers, dress meat and supply to their doorstep. These are investment areas. Of course, it's going to need other components like the logistic aspect and ICT and all those. But these are just, in short, the areas, the specific investment areas in beef value chain. So in conclusion, we said the Nigerian population is projected to be over 200 million. The traditional beef production system cannot meet our beef demand. Then we need to put the value chain approach that will open investment space and stimulate animal protein security, job provision, foreign exchange earnings. And before I conclude, I will briefly add what the government have been doing or what the government is doing to enable a very conducive business environment. Number one, we used to have the LIBCs, the livestock breeding and multiplication centers, scattered all over Nigeria. Some of them are into beef, like the one in Adada is for Ndama animal. There's another facility in Fashola. We have in Adamawa. We have in Niger State. We have in other places that are specifically for beef. The private sector now is being invited to come and take these projects and run them like a private concern under lease with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. They maintain these farms, they do their business, they produce animals there. Then we have interventions. I've mentioned the one about the grazing reserve intervention. We have the one we call the Rural Livestock Intervention Program. In other words, that we call RUGA. What is this RUGA about? It is providing the necessary infrastructures for the private sector now to run and do their business in the respective places. We have various policies that have been set up to make it easier for people to go into beef production. Part of it is the animal breeding policy, animal feed policy, and one that does not really concern beef but is still very relevant is the dairy policy, because the male calf or the male animal from dairy is an input for beef. And under these policies are roles, are responsibilities for various actors, like the Standard Organization of Nigeria, like NAFDAC, and various other parastatals that has to do with food safety in Nigeria. So on this, I will say thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry, not many pictures. I know a picture could not be added to this because of the time I had to allocate for it. I hope I've made a little contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So we'll go on to the question and answer session. If you have any questions, please can you type them in the question box, and they'll be attended to.
Can I ask a question, please? It has to do with the government programs and policies. I did not get enough information, so I was wondering if the speaker could explain a little more about the policies and programs, and also how it works. What is the process if an entrepreneur is interested in keying into these programs? How do you go about it? Is it on your website? And what are they exactly? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Policy, as it is, the policy we have running now is the National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development from 2022 to 2027. It replaced the Green Alternative Policy. The National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy talks directly to agribusiness, talks directly to the use of technology, directly to innovations, new innovations. And this could be applied to what I've said or what I presented earlier. So specifically for our programs, I've mentioned the Rural Livestock Intervention Program under what we call the National Livestock Transformation Plan, NLTP. I will dwell a bit on this NLTP. Is the umbrella intervention of all livestock, including beef. Where beef is concerned here is under two programs. Number one is the RULIP, which is about providing infrastructures Number one is the development of the grazing reserves. It's still infrastructure. Then the other one is what we call the beef development program. Under the beef development program, the ministry intervened with groups, cooperative societies that are into either production or processing. For the for the Rural Livestock Intervention Program, the state, that is where implementation of the NLTP takes place. The state now identify a program or a project and express interest to the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. And the ministry will look at this, we develop a work plan based on the needs that have been identified. It is the state that will now get the investors or the entrepreneurs who will now take the lead in running whatever infrastructure the federal government puts on ground. That's under RULIP and under development of grazing reserves. I hope I've answered your questions to some extent.
Thank you. There are other questions, so yes, I'm sure you explain some more.
Okay.
Farida, over to you for question and answer. Thank you.
Okay. We have a few in the question box. So this participant is asking what is the government doing to make beef semen available to beef farmers? And yeah, and another is asking when the intervention would commence, the intervention that you mentioned.
Okay. What is the government doing to make the semen? Is it the semen?
Yes, what the government is doing to make beef semen available to beef farmers.
To beef farmers, yes. Number one, if you remember during my presentation, I mentioned certain number of breeds of animals that conform to European standards. They are indigenous, but given the right feeding, given the right inputs, they can perform and meet our needs. And it was part of the outcomes of our first dairy and livestock retreat. We recommended that those breeds that were mentioned, Ndama, Sokoto Gudali, Adama Gudali, if developed or if invested in, can meet our beef needs in Nigeria. However, we are not limited to this. We can use the foreign semen, we can use the foreign blood to upgrade these animals. What is the government doing now to make this available? Over the years, government have been buying semen, store semen, and try and reach out to farmers with semen. And it has not worked. It's part of the failure I talked about. What the government is doing now is to provide the enabling environment for people now to approach the ministry and import their semen as long as they fall under the identified semen that are allowed in Nigeria. These are with us here. If anybody is interested in that, they can approach the department. We will now assist in seeing how people can import their semen. There's a limit to what the government can do in this because it's supposed to be business. That is for what the government is doing. Then these programs have been on. The respective programs I mentioned have been part of the programs of the Department of Animal Husbandry Services. For instance, I will mention Borno State. We intervened in Borno. I may not be able to pronounce the name of the place very well, but it's called Ngarama Rafa in Borno State. where Ruga is in place now. We have intervened in Gombe. We have done the same thing in Bauchi by providing water, by providing pasture, infrastructure. And we did intervention in Bauchi again for the Bauchi Meat Company last year under 2021. But I will want to say here again that there's a limit to what we can do. What we can do better is to provide the enabling environment for businesses to take these infrastructures up and run them like businesses. Under the Beef Development Program, we started a program last year, a project last year we call the Community Feedlot, where we want to encourage farmers not to be fattening their animals in the backyard, but to come together as a group. And we now provide a common facility where they can now put their animals in and fatten. Then they can do their business. They now can now have cycles of fattening programs in a year. We did that one in Oyo State last year. This year, we want to do again in FCT and Oyo State. But the resources are meager, let me say. We have to, the little we have to spread. But what we do anywhere we intervene is to do what you call the prototype type of housing that people can now replicate using local available raw materials. So the programs have been on. They have been part of our programs. They are in our budget. And if the department is approached, we assist.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So we'll take a couple of questions from the participants that will come on live to ask. We have Abubakar Zaki. Abubakar, can you ask your question in just about a minute, please, so we keep to time? Thank you.
Farida?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Abubakar Zaki has actually typed his question. I wonder if Hakeem would be able to look at the question and answer and quickly run through them, because there are about 18 questions. Mr. Hakeem, if you go to the question and answer box, you'll see all the questions. If you could quickly look at them and respond quickly. We have about...
Okay.
Yes, just look at them.
19.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anonymous attendee. Okay, I think I've answered this one. What is the government doing to make beef semen available to beef farmers? Adiola, okay, in Ogun State. All right, when will the intervention begin? I've answered this too. I can't access other questions.
Okay, the other question is, can you make the policy available?
From Mohammed Ali Baba, what are the support structures available? More importantly, how can we encourage, sensitize, and win? Oh, I didn't get that. Okay, and like I said, those the interventions have been on. If you go to our offices in the states, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development is available everywhere in Nigeria, all the states in Nigeria. We have our offices, that's the greenhouses. If we request for information, the state coordinator, we pass this down to us, then we engage. Well, is it possible to give us an opportunity to showcase our cool box for the transportation, sales, and storage of meat and semen for the ministry? Oh, why not? Why not? Please send all these requests to the federal, to the Honorable Minister. It will come to the appropriate department, and we engage from there. I think I've answered the structures available. Sensitize, win our headers off correct mentality of feed is free. Yes, that is why I said we need more entrepreneurs in the field. Once we change their mindset from what they are currently practicing into being entrepreneurs, that you can actually make money from all these things you think is free, then I think we'll be better for it. That's the way to go. More capacity building for them, among them, taking champions from them, providing other facilities that are not really agriculture related, like other hands-on activities that will put their mind off, so that we have less farmers. If we have improved breed, we have less farmers producing more. Information on the animal feeds that you can prepare locally. Yes, a whole lot of them. We look at the locally available materials. They are there. The one that is most abundant will soon be coming off now, which is crop residues. We just need a little capacity building to be able to process these crop residues into feed for beef cattle. What can we benefit from beef research program in NAPRI? I think NAPRI will be in the best position to answer this question. Please, is it possible to provide a simple feasibility analysis of the yield of the beef production business? This will encourage decision making. This is part of the value chain. This is part of the value chain. This is up to animal scientists and people in related fields to prepare standard feasibilities for people who want to invest in beef cattle production or in beef. More questions? 21. Okay. Please, can you make the policy available to us? Okay. Beef does not have a policy at the moment. What we have is the National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy. It's available in the ministry. It's available in the ministry for anybody who wants to, who is interested in getting. That's the NATIP. It's newly launched, I think last month or thereabout. So what are the identified breed semen that can be imported? Well, Simmental, which is dual purpose. That's for beef and dairy. I think another one I can easily remember is this Indian breed. There are many of them that are in the animal breeding policy. I'm afraid, or I'm sorry, I can't list them here now, but on request, I can do that. Please, what do you have for extension services to serve the value chain? Yes, extension service is part of the value chain. And the moment we start thinking towards having private extension provision, the better it will be for us. Many government extension workers are aged, have retired, and new ones are not really coming up because extension is tied to interventions like the World Bank intervention for the ADPs. And the moment this dries up, you see there's no continuity. It cannot be sustained. But if you have private extension workers that cuts across from input supply to marketing, I think the better for us. Just like we are seeing in crops. Please permit me to say, like Holland Farms, they have their extension workers. They are private. And if you come nearer to, if you go to animal care consults, they have their extension workers. So the same thing is needed in the beef value chain, private extension workers, because they are part of the system. And there will be need for more comprehensive information and guide on selection of cattle for, is it for beef? Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Research and Development, NAPRE, and other institutions like the universities and colleges of agriculture. They can assist in this. Can we access any federal government financial assistance? The Federal Ministry of Agri does not provide financial assistance. What we do is to link you with finance institutions. The ministry does not provide finance. Okay, I think the questions I'm looking at, I think I've provided answers to them.
Can I ask a question, sir?
Please.
Because the time is limited, I was wondering if it's if you wouldn't mind if we can share your number or give us your email so that our iProduce members can contact you maybe via email. So because a lot of questions, detailed questions might need one-on-one rather than like a group.
Okay, I think I will put my email in the chat box.
Yes, please. Thank
okay.
You.
Okay. My phone number.
Yes. If you give your phone number, that would be wonderful too. They can send you WhatsApp messages. Maybe you can hook them up with your staff in the States. I don't know how strong the state ministries are, to be honest. I think the state ministries would be under the state, not under the federal ministry, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So each state would have their own approach to how they deal with this. But
Yes.
federal ministry can just coordinate. Okay. So what about the development partners? I know FAO.
Oh, yes.
I know FAO and IFAD. If you could just tell us, is there any opportunities for private sector to work with them? Are they providing extension services? Is there anything you can get through them?
Yeah. Development partners, FAO, ECRISAT, USAID, World Bank. I will take it from the nearest one, which is the one we call LPRES, the Livestock Productivity and Resilience Support Project. Under this, we have the implementation at the state level, and states come strong on these two. They have been asked to express interest. There's a sharing formula from the World Bank, the federal government, and the state governments too. And states that have expressed interest in beef, they are there. Many express interest in poultry. Many express interest in dairy. The EPRES office is in Abuja here, but for anybody who wants to participate in this, I think we have to go through the state. What has my state expressed interest on? What value chain? Then they take it up from there. There's a press office here in Abuja that is coordinating all that for World Bank. That is the World Bank intervention we have currently. FAO developed ranches in Plateau, Adamawa, and Kaduna. They have handed this over to the ministry. Again, we are working with the state to kickstart operations on these ranches. What they did was just preliminary work. What we now do is to add to what they did in terms of provision of infrastructures. Development partners have their own ways of working. They only partner with the ministry. For instance, the USAID wants to go into a lot of livestock production now, but they are not going to do it directly. They use companies to carry it out. I think they have a desk in the ministry, that is the USAID. I've mentioned that of World Bank. They have their office here in Abuja here, HelpRest. USAID has a desk. FAO, through their offices, what FAO does is partner with the ministry just like the other ones and hand over to the ministry. We have other development partners like the ICRISAT and a whole lot of them that are related to beef or to agriculture. But they have their own ways of, some deal directly with the states. Some go to the state through the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. But the best thing is to approach the ministry first to know which one applies out of these development partners.
Okay, sir. I think a lot of people still have some questions, but we've run out of time. So if you give us your phone number and email, if you post it, that would be really useful. People can contact you directly. There's a lot. Okay, fantastic. Especially when it comes to the development partners, which companies, how do they select companies to work with, etc. These are things we'd like to find out. I'm sure a lot of people would want to know how they can key in.
Development partners have their own system.
Have their own?
They have their own system. How
Yes.
they pick the people who work with them and all those.
Okay. But if you can even just point them to where the office was or some officer, then they can go on their own.
I think we can do that through, WhatsApp. If you say request, then because I don't have it at my disposal now.
Of course, that's understandable. That's very kind. And once we have your contact details, that would solve the problem. People can talk to you directly. So, Farida.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for your presentation. And now we'll have our second speaker. He's Mr. Adetilewa A. Adebajo, also known as Tilly, and his profile will be up now. Okay, so Mr. Adetilewa, known as Tilly, is an entrepreneurial transaction business manager with 35 years experience gained in the corporate, public, and academic sectors. Tilly has developed a stellar career in banking. After earlier experience and career development in the international financial markets on Wall Street, his last 20 years have been focused on the emerging markets involving corporate finance, financial management, academia, economic policy, financial advisory, project finance, and consulting. Transactions executed have cut across infrastructure, aviation, agribusiness, real estate, telecoms, oil and gas, power, hospitality, manufacturing, public sector, concessions, and privatization advisory. Thank you so much for joining us here today, sir.
Thank you very much. And I think it's still morning. Good morning, everybody. And I would first of all like to thank Aisha Umar for inviting me to this and your iProduce Agribusiness Hub. I also like to thank the last speaker, Mr. Hakeem Ibilade, for his wonderful insight and presentation, which will definitely complement what I'm about to say. And I would like to say good morning to everybody that has joined this webinar this morning, or now going close to afternoon. So Aisha, how do I start? What would you like me to do to start?
So we've already got your PowerPoint presentation, and we'll give you 20-30 minutes.
Okay.
And then that would take us to about 12:30. Then we'll take question and answer. And again, anybody who has questions, start to type so that when the presentation is over at 12:30, the questions and answer can start immediately after. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to confirm that my audio is perfect and everybody can hear me properly.
Yes, from here, I can definitely, it's really clear. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Thank you for your introduction. Who was the young lady that introduced me? What's her name, please?
Farida Aminu, she's the
Okay.
coordinator for I Produce.
Okay. Thank you very much, Farida, for your kind introduction. Now that Farida has introduced me, I'll tell you a bit about my background. I have a first degree in economics and international relations. I have a triple major, actually, from the University of Wisconsin in Madison in economics and international relations, a second major in agricultural economics, and a third major in meat and animal science. But my focus of my career has been in banking. My first experience into animal processing was because I came from an urban background. When I was in Wisconsin, in Madison, I was sent to work on a cattle ranch in Colorado and Utah for 2.5 months each for 2 summers. And I also worked on a meat processing plant. I worked on a dairy farm, and I worked on several farms most of my summers, gaining practical experience to be able to understand or to be able to back up my meat and animal science degree. So I have a very good practical knowledge of not only meat processing, but also ranching. I was actually working as a cowboy for 2.5 months on horseback, doing artificial insemination and getting my hands very, very dirty. That was actually a full class for me over summer. It was summer school, and I earned credits for those practical experience towards my degree. But having done that, I came back to Nigeria about 20 years ago, and my focus has really been on banking. And I have tried to look at the policies of government to see how I could apply a lot of what we could do. I'm working with the River Basin Development Authority to use some of their land to farm. I actively farm 20 hectares of land in Ikenne, in Ogun State, in Nigeria here, which is behind a silo that is owned by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, quite interestingly enough. And I grow soybean and corn, and I work actively with the IITA, who supply me with very good high yield seeds. So I do farming as a hobby, but I wish I could do it on a full-time commercial basis, but we just are not there yet in Nigeria. For those of you who live in Abuja, I'm sure you know Next Cash and Carry. When Next Cash and Carry opened, I set up their butchery over there, and I was actively trading cattle between the north of Nigeria and south of Nigeria. I visited Potaskum, I visited Miadua, where I get a lot of my supply of cattle. And even when I was in Abuja, I was slaughtering at a ranch, at an abattoir just outside Abuja. And I brought my carcasses into Next Cash and Carry, where I had a cold room, a nice storage, where I aged my beef. And I did retail, and I supplied both the Hilton, Sheraton, and all the restaurants in Abuja. What I did then was I used to age my beef for like 1 week after I had slaughtered it at about 0 degrees, which tenderized the beef. And by the time I cut the beef, a lot of the hotels were liking it. So there's a process to which we can do that. But I moved out of Abuja about 7 years ago, and I sold the business, and I believe somebody else must be running the butcher shop at Next Cash and Carry. Even in Lagos now, while I do have an interest in that, I've not done much in that area. So I've had very good practical experience with the beef value chain. There's a lot of opportunities. You know, we work even in Lagos. We work with the big abattoir here at Okuoba, which has a modern abattoir, but unfortunately, most of the slaughtering is done on the slabs on the floor. And, you know, a nice, massive abattoir, modern abattoir lays very idle. So if I need to slaughter beef, I use the abattoir in Okuoba and cut it for people. So that's very underutilized. Very people slaughter in the modern abattoir. Most people are slaughtering out there on the floor, which has been a massive problem in terms of getting a shift into the whole cultural issues. So not too long ago, I approached the central bank and I presented a cattle livestock value chain transformation project for them to find so that we could do a bankable business plan, because this is a very profitable business. ShopRite has had to contract a Zambian company called Master Meats to be able to help it provide all the meat you see in the ShopRite supermarkets across the country. I have actively supported ShopRite when I was in Abuja also, in terms of helping them to slaughter and put carcasses into their system, and also help them bring cattle from the north to their abattoir also in Ikenne, because my farm borders the Master Meats factory, and it is from there that they do a lot of supply to a significant amount of ShopRite stores in the southwest. They have another supply hub in the north in Abuja, where they bring in cattle, slaughter from abattoirs there to be able to process for their stores. So in terms of the most modern facilities you'll see, it is a ShopRite value chain that you can see, whereby they have integrated into the local markets. The beef they use is local. They go into the local markets from Potaskum, Miadua, and also some other parts of Yobe and Bauchi. Bring in the cattle, slaughter, and then move out. So a lot of all this cattle goes into the Kara market just before the Long Bridge in Lagos and Ogun State. And that's the hub for the Southwest for cattle trading. There's another facility in Oyo, but a lot of all these are informal, whereby trucks, cattle are just being trucked and they're being slaughtered. But in terms of the modern value chain, I think ShopRite is about the only one that has the most modern value chain in the country. So as the last speaker has said, there is a significant amount of opportunity in this country. And what we have done is to get the central bank to put a bankable business plan in place. And we have spoken to several governments, including the Kebbi government, to help us put something in place. We've gotten some areas in Oyo State. And I think the former speaker mentioned the southwest of Nigeria under Obafemi Awolowo had set up some very elaborate cattle breeding systems, which some of the remnants, the last speaker mentioned, are in Fashola, which is a breeding center. So there's an effort to revive a lot of all these facilities to be able to put us in the right space and to be able to start looking at getting the breeds sorted out. So what I'm going to present to you this morning is this cattle livestock value chain transformation project, that if any one of you are interested in looking at where the future is, and as the last speaker said, there are many opportunities at very areas. You could be a breeder, and doing a breeder, you do great, and you provide grandparent stock, and you also use that to also provide semen, so people can buy semen for you. You could be in a situation whereby you just provide calves, so you provide calves and people come and then buy them, they feed them, and then you could do the feedlotting. And of course, you can focus on processing, whereby you have an abattoir and then you cut the beef into halves, and then you cut it into all the various steaks and all the various parts which is there, which is really now looking at the bottom of the value chain, whereby you're processing the beef and then you can make it fine. I went to Federal Government College in Kano, and when I was in Kano, Kano had one of the top corned beef manufacturing plants. There were industrial areas in Kano, which was mostly in Bompai and Gongoni area. Aisha, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. That is correct.
In these areas, there was massive production of corned beef from local beef that supplied the whole of Nigeria. And it is rather unfortunate that these days you see the corned beef we import, which is Exeter, is coming from Brazil, which is rather unfortunate. So there's opportunities in that area to even process corned beef, which is something that people like to eat. So there are various opportunities and segments of this. I saw some questions. Some people in Lagos say they are providing cool boxes to transport beef and also to transport semen. That's also a fantastic value-added business, because one of the biggest problems we have in Nigeria today is the cold chain. People get to the market, the farmers, you get hot beef. the beef is slaughtered like 5 a.m. and it's in the markets by 8 a.m. and by 12 noon, they're all sold, and most of the butchers don't use any refrigeration. So people go there, they buy their meats, and people just buy meats that they can use to support themselves. So I think this sort of innovations around this industry is very, very important. For instance, I mean, if you take a look at the amount of beef that is slaughtered in Lagos every day, maybe 10,000 head of cattle, 10,000 head of cattle, maybe at 100,000 each, you know what that value is. That's about $1 billion. So you're looking at a massive amount of money, whereby if an average one cow is 100,000, you know that at least 10 cattle will be about $1 million. So 10,000 of that, you're looking at $1 billion a day. So that industry in Lagos, as disorganized as it might seem, is worth $1 billion naira a day, and that's 365 billion naira a year. If you take a look at that with about current exchange rates, that's quite significant in terms of in excess of $600-700 million. Nearly on just under $1 billion a year. So it is a very, very viable business, and that is just at that end. If you now get onto the value-added side, whereby maybe you're producing corned beef, or you're just producing heifers, or producing steers, or calves for raising, or feedlotting, there's significant opportunities in terms of how this business can impact the country. So that is just my own experience in Nigeria. So what I do now today is I don't do much beef processing anymore, because my facility in Abuja was perfect. So when I moved back to Lagos, I sold that facility, but I had an abattoir that slaughtered for me, and I was processing and selling out of not only Next Cash and Carry was my base, but from Next Cash and Carry, I was also supplying a lot of hotels and restaurants. And you'll be shocked that Nigerians, both at the middle class level and at all levels, appreciate good products. They like mincemeats, they like to try it, steaks. They like to have even their offals, cow head, I clean it up for them nicely. All the tripe, the shaki, cow leg, bomo, all those things I present to them in nice packaging, and they love it. And, it was a very, very good business for me. But I didn't have the attention. I didn't have the time to put the attention on it. But believe me, if you put the products right, people come in with their specific orders. They want kidney, they want this, that, you just put everything, put it in a box for them, they'll pay the premium. So it was a very good experience. It was, it was like eye-opener for me. And even up till today, even the chef at the Hilton is still calling me, and and I've told him that, look, it's because he was a bit surprised. So when I told them and I invited them over to see what I was doing, and I sent them some of my steaks. Initially, they thought I'd imported it, but then I showed them what I was doing by aging my beef. Both at the Sheraton and at the Hilton, they were very, very impressed, and a lot of restaurants with what we were doing. But again, we couldn't meet the demand for the high-end products. So, and I had to increase capacity. So it wasn't easy, and we had to use a type of cattle that we were getting. We had to feed them at that abattoir. We had a small feedlot, whereby we were doing a lot of grain feeding for about 2 or 3 weeks to be able to have the right sort of marbling on that. So it is a very good business, but you need to be able to push into it. ShopRite is doing very well with that business. Master Meats Abattoir in Ikenne is doing extremely well, and they have a ready market because they're going into ShopRite stores, and it's a big line item for them. And that is we're just scratching the surface, because every neighborhood, either a high-class neighborhood, especially the middle-class neighborhoods, and even the lower-class neighborhoods, you'll be surprised that if you have a proper butcher shop, you can do very well. So it involves a lot of investments. You need to be at the retail level, and you need to be able to have a supply chain to put them together. Farida, can you please move on to the next slide so I can start my presentation? Okay, so these are my table of contents. I'm going to talk about the state of play in the beef value chain in Nigeria today, the potential development pathways. I'm going to talk about the business case. I'm going to talk about our approach and methodology, our consortium, and of course, as you see, we were charging central bank some fees for this work, and also we'll talk about our team. So we'll skip some of those fees, but at least you'll understand the state of play, because this was a presentation that went to the central bank. Can I have the next slide, please? What is the state of play in the cattle chain in Nigeria today? Next slide, please. Existing resource endowments, I think we're looking at about 19 million head of cattle. We have 15 states with at least over 500,000 head of cattle, 85 million hectares of uncultivated arable land in Nigeria, grassland resources with 54% total land area, cattle production knowledge and capabilities. There's a traditional Fulani livelihood, informal industry players, cattle rearers, traders, and transporters to the butchers. So, you know, we're looking at the regional and international demand for beef to grow expected in the coming decades. And I think with the population of Nigeria at about 200 million, I think the need to provide protein, as the former speaker has said, is very, very important. Next slide, please. The cattle livestock ecosystem in Nigeria. One of the main challenges that we've seen is the fact that how is the best way to go about it? If you take a look at the distance of Kano to Lagos, a place like Miadua, which is in Katsina State, which is just north of Kano, getting beef to Lagos, you see, mostly is being done by trucking. So the question you're asking is that, do you slaughter in Kano and bring the beef down to the markets in Lagos, or do you bring live animals down to Lagos and slaughter here? When Nigeria was Nigeria, at a point in time, we had trains that used to bring cattle and there was a place, a particular station in Abeokuta called Lafenwa. Lafenwa was a place that had a feedlot. So cattle from the north used to come to Lafenwa, they'll offload them there and they'll go into the feedlot. And it is from that feedlot that they manage themselves. And, you know, so there was organization in this market before in the 60s and in the early 70s. So Lafenwa was a big place whereby all the cattle were going to, they'll process them there, and live beef never went into Lagos. There was also another processing plant at Ido Terminus, which was the end of the railway line in Nigeria at that point in time. So in that point in time, most of the cattle was taken by train down to the processing centers in Lagos, and that was where things were done. But unfortunately, things have changed significantly now. So what we're saying is that 90% of Nigeria's cattle production is in the north, and basically more than half of the demand is in the south. So, you know, you look at the difference of 1,000 kilometers, and these are the challenges that we've been trying to understand. But basically, you can see some sort of costs in terms of processed beef is cheaper than transporting live cattle. So ideally, it's important that because of the transportation problems we have, we've resorted to transporting live cattle, which is more expensive. Next slide, please. Basically, we're looking at all the various costs in terms of Nigerian beef retail price per kilogram in dollars. You're looking at the margins for everybody. So basically, the key issue is that Nigerian cattle have low slaughter weights, average of 250 kgs at slaughter compared to 450 kg in Brazil and higher weights in America. I think the other speaker alluded to that it takes a lot longer for our cattle to grow, and you know, they don't achieve higher weights. So basically slaughter weights are pretty low. So in terms of yield, this is where it is, and that really has to do with breeding. So that's another challenge that we have. You know, so they're low producer margins, but at the same time, on a big scale, it is quite profitable. And you can see the numbers for India, and you can take a look at the numbers from the Netherlands there. Next slide, please. So in most countries, the industry generates 80% of its earnings by value added. So basically, most of the money is from value added after slaughter, processing, and packaging. And that is really what we really need to focus on. So you're looking at 90% of production by smallholders, nomadic trend. It's very fragmented in Nigeria. 50% or 60% of slaughtered cattle walk across from neighboring countries, which affects the problem of the quality of the beef. 80% of the abattoirs, as the other speaker has said, are government owned, and they're not very efficient. As we've talked about it, the most efficient system on ground is the Master Meats and ShopRite partnership. I think that is really the main one is. Could you just excuse me, please, 1 minute? Sorry. So this is the production. I just had to take a small break there. So basically, this is where we have the challenges with the abattoirs, as the other speaker has said. We need more private abattoirs here. And like you said, most sales channels are informal. You just go to the market, you get to the butcher section, you get the beef. In Lagos, they have what you call the Eco Meat Van that has been transporting beef and trying to be formalized, but still very fragmented. And I think the Eco Meat Van is just something they have done mostly to assist with the hygiene. But you know, there are issues that we have here, but they're not insurmountable, and the business definitely remains profitable. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay. The potential of beef production in Nigeria, and I think this is something that we need to look at. The Southwest obviously is one of the biggest markets in Nigeria. So, and basically, given the high cost of moving beef from point to production and slaughter to the demand centers, I think what we have been looking at is to look at beef processing zones. You know, basically, we need to have like these 100,000 winners, and to be able to look at points from maybe a centralized place in Kebbi to Oyo, Northern Oyo State, which is very close to the Southwest, and probably look at something around Utukpo in Benue State, whereby you can now supply the rest of the South. So there needs to be some sort of centers around the middle belt of the country, which is acting as distribution points, because there's also requirements for land. You know, so basically, as the other speaker has said, we need to encourage new breed of cattle with introducing the right type of semen, and looking at more specialized feedlots, because the feedlotting, I think, is a critical aspect of improving the quality of cattle. And then the growth will be driven on the demand side by population and income growth, which we have seen Nigeria's GDP increasingly going. And then you're looking at supply side drivers like, you know, ranchers and people coming in. And like the speaker has said, the policy and infrastructure support is important. So they've listed that the government is now getting ready to get rid of a lot of all these facilities. And it is important that we look at how we can get these facilities sorted out, and we can get everything properly done without too much of a problem. And, you know, we worked with Ernst & Young on this, and they're looking at their value proposition of a development of a robust business case and financial modeling to support decision on the value chain proposition. And they've also looked at identifying strategic partnerships and commercials required to support the viability and implementation of the project. So like the other speaker has said, I think which is also very important, that when we have these sort of sessions, we have somebody from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture who has given us a very strong overview, knowing what to do. And I'm pleased that he said that they have so many assets now that they're willing to give out, to privatize, or to concession out for private sectors to come in and form partnerships to be able to develop this on a commercial basis. So with this sort of presentations that we have, then there's also funding support from the central bank, because central bank has intervention funds with loans at 3%. So it is important that we bring everybody together, which has been my frustration, because in order to set this up, there's some assets that I don't mind to take over, but in order to get the central bank to give me those loans at 3%, I think it will make this industry definitely explode. So it's important that we sit down more with the presenter from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to see how we can now begin to get some practical implementation sorted out. Next slide, please. A unique holistic approach to design of economic attractiveness. I think we've talked about these things in area. Supporting infrastructure, feedlot inputs, production sustainability. We've talked about the opportunity areas, processing and facility hubs, transports and logistics, creation of government extension services for feedlots, partnerships in the production of required high compound feed, technical capacity, and a lot of all these things. So we are focusing on setting up a big special processing zone to enhance the competitiveness of the livestock and beef transformation value chain, which will have a multiplier effect on the economy at large. That is our idea, to be able to look at where these beef processing zones are. Next slide, please. Well, we look at the SWOT analysis of the beef livestock sector. What are the strengths? Nigeria has uncultivated land that can be used for production. Climate is favorable. Livestock, so growing population. Meat is part of the traditional diet in most commodities. What are the weaknesses? Production is predominantly small scale, lack of organized marketing systems, poor quality control and standards, lack of good insurance support to back up high risk of investments in the industry. What are the threats? Low literacy levels for primary producers, adoption of technology and bringing out high quality breeds is low. As we said, the weight of Nigerian cattle and the quality of Nigerian cattle is low. We need to bring in semen to improve that. Low gestation period, which the other speaker talked about, communal clashes and disturbances with the Fulani herdsmen. It's put a damp on this business. But having looked at the strengths, weaknesses, and threats, there are opportunities. Our population of 200 million, urbanization, determination on agriculture, and financial support is very critical. And that could make it work if we do get these loans from the central bank. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please.
Oh, what's going on?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Strategic imperatives required to realize the potentials of beef transformation in Nigeria. Basically, we've talked about strengthening the regions, establish strategic business linkages, optimize endowments, develop a robust, cost-competitive supply chain, invest in infrastructure enablers. Without a doubt, I think these are the things that we are suggesting that will make that impact in terms of getting the value chain up and running. Next slide, please. Potential development pathways. Next slide, please. So I can move through this very quickly. Transformation imperatives for Nigerian beef value chain. Provide Nigerians with safe quality beef at good value. Halal is also very important for us. I think most of the beef we have here is actually halal. People don't realize it, but it doesn't really make any difference, but people are there. But there's also export opportunities, disruptive business models, unlocking productivity, upgrade slaughter and retail to increase value added for customers, and deploy priority transversal systems for long-term sustainability. We've talked about this. There are opportunities we've looked at. Next slide, please. Potential models for the development of the beef value chain. We've talked about existing business processing zones in the south, closer to the demand centers, existing agricultural clusters for providing livestock, the grain processors, the feedlots we've talked about, locating that in like the middle belt to have a transition area, and ideal beef production for demand. And with this, we've talked about, and these are the rationales, we've talked about this. And we've looked at certain areas whereby we leverage and see where quite a few of these things could come into place. So these are just potential models we've talked about. Next slide, please. Potential structuring of the business. We've talked about the beef special processing zones. We're talking about looking at a PPP real estate company. So definitely private sector driven. It must be Within the PPP real estate company, we can look at that with something with the government, maybe ownership of some government assets, but the operating company must definitely be private. We're looking at a one-stop shop. We're looking at specific services, general services, logistics, and then the zones will have multiple commodities, probably not only a feedlot producers, you have a slaughterhouse, beef processor, grain, chicken. So basically it will be a center whereby there's a lot of access to animal feed. And it's not just the beef producers that need the animal feed, the chicken producers, the grain processors will also be will also be located here. So everything is there. Next slide, please. So what is the business case? Next slide, please. So investors have multiple opportunities to explore the beef value chain, with the two key models being the feedlots and the integrated processing unit models. These are things we've identified here. Feedlots to fatten the cattle, and end-to-end integrated units that specialize in meat. Feed units, intensive feed cattle ranching, slaughterhouse, and processing units. So if you take a look at these units, these are where you look at your main investments. You see what the description of those things are, the key requirements, the investment incentives, and barriers to investments is, again, capital. So basically, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate areas that you can go in and specialize into, and you can begin to see some good value in that area. So these are the things that we're looking at. Next slide, please. Investor analysis for the feedlot model. Local beef industry players, local non-beef industry players, foreign beef industry players. If we had to import quite a lot of beef is imported here in Nigeria at the higher levels. Most of the top restaurants now in Lagos and Abuja, I know, use imported beef steaks, and they're quite expensive. But that is the taste that we've developed in that area. It's not as if our beef cannot be there, but you know, if you take a look at the feedlot model, you have to understand where you can go. You could actually develop a brand of cattle that is at a high level and can import, and you can import. Countries like Botswana, Namibia, and Ethiopia import a lot of their beef into the European Union, into the EU. They slaughter beef, they package it, and it's certified for the EU markets, and it's something that we can do. And it's a mainstay of their economy, both Botswana and Namibia. It's a very, very important foreign exchange earner for them. And there's no reason why we cannot get there in Nigeria today, because the systems, those countries are smaller than we are, and we have more land mass, and we can make more land available for that kind of thing. Next slide, please. Investor analysis for the integrator model. So look at this at the foreign beef players. We can see what we're looking at. You have African large-scale integrated operators such as Karam Beef and LHC in South Africa. They're very big, and you know, and even not are they only not processing, but looking at the South African market and beyond. But they're not working alone. They have a lot of outgrowers, people supplying them with cattle, with steers. That they use and they fatten, and you know, calves that they grow, and you know, so basically they have a whole chain of not only people who supply them with feed, but also that help them with their production, and they buy off a lot of people. So it's a chain that you need to put together. You need to develop a system. Next one, please. Our approach and methodology. Next slide, please. What you need to do when. So basically, you need to start out by your planning. You need to establish a feasibility, which will take you about 6 weeks. And then you need to do your project planning, gather the data, know what sector you want to be in, how you want to go about it. This will take you about 6 weeks. Then you need to reach financial close, which will take you 12 to 24 weeks. And sometimes in Nigeria, maybe take you up to a year. So you need to be prepared. That is really where the challenges come through. Then, of course, you need to start your financial, commercial operation dates, which you now know you've started working. And these are the sort of processes that you need to look at. So these are the 3 basic stages: feasibility, financial close, and commencements. It's pretty standard. Next slide, please. Basically, what we've done is that we've told the central bank we will conduct comprehensive analysis of the current and future market to extract strategic insights, which will inform and guide the development of the beef special processing zones. So we were looking at putting together a business case feasibility, take a look at stakeholder consultation, and then we'll take a look at capital raise and implementation plan. Because what we were trying to do was to get the central bank to put together this feasibility study and to be able to show the private sector that, look, this is a feasibility study that has been done. This is a market study that has been done on this industry. You can look at it, read it, and see that it is viable and all the research is there. And when people come or investors come and they see this information that we've provided, they understand that all the data is in place and they realize that it's a viable business that they need to focus on. Next slide, please. A unique holistic approach to design commercial and attractiveness strategies through agglomeration and clustering, which is what we've talked about. A key strategic focus, supply analysis, product demand analysis, financing, and infrastructure enablers. These are all very important elements in terms of looking at this clustering approach. Next slide, please. Our stakeholder consultation strategy, we're looking at interviewing people to be able to talk to key stakeholders and understand exactly how we're going to do it. So just a methodology in terms of our questionnaires to be able to get this information so that we can give investors the right sort of information already and they're moving. Next slide, please. Capital raising process, investor identification and lead generation. This is very important. You need to prepare for the market, you need to bring to the market, and then you need to transact. So basically what we had planned to do was to create modelings to be able to show that at each different business level, there's viability and profitability in terms of looking at support and helping people understand how much equity they need and how much debt that the central bank should be able to provide to be able to support most of these projects. Next slide, please. Scope and methodology. We've talked about this before. Feasibility and market diagnostics, stakeholder consultation, business case and transformation. We've talked about, we have a timeline that we can use to do this. And as we've said, the objective is to prepare a financial model for commercial and economic assessment of the project. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is our company. AgriConsult is our company and we set up a consortium. Next slide, please. All this is not really necessary. So basically, AgriConsult is one of Nigeria's leading agricultural and value chain organizations. We provide technical and operational firms. The CFG Advisory is investment banking services, and EY is, so basically these are the three, these are the consortium of the three companies that we put together. We are AgriConsult and the CFG Advisory. I'm the chairman of AgriConsult and the CEO of the CFG Advisory. And I worked with EY to be able to put this together to put to the central bank to do that. Unfortunately, we haven't got much feedback yet from the central bank from Israel. We're trying to get them to get things sorted out for us, and hopefully things could work out. I think the next slide is not really necessary, but can you just go to the next slide? Let's see where it is, what it's all about. I think, yes, so from here now is just about to tell more details about who AgriConsult is, what we do, and things like that. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I think I will end my presentation at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your fantastic presentation. So we'll go to the Q&A session now. So if you can click on the Q&A box, you'd be able to see the question. So, yeah.
Okay. I guess the Ruga question is not really for me. What kind of certificate? I have a question here from Abubakar Aminu. He says, what kind of certifications do abattoirs need? So to supply stores, which abattoir is the best in Nigeria at the moment? Even heard about the Sokoto modern abattoir. Well, abattoirs are regulated at the state level. At each state, there's what you call a meat edict, and it is each state that guides abattoir certification. So that's a state operation. That's really where it is. So in terms of the best abattoirs around, we'll find out, the best abattoirs around. There are a lot of government abattoirs that are abandoned. Like I said, Lagos has a modern abattoir that can take 30,000 for animals a day, a modern line, but they're not using it. They slaughter on the floor. So you go all over the country. There's also a very good one outside Abuja, which I used to use, which is a modern one, which is quite nice, which is owned privately. So there are quite a lot of few privately owned ones, and also Master Meats, who supplies ShopRite. They have their own abattoir in Ikene, which is pretty standard also. Adeolu says you can just buy animals in the open market, slaughter and sell to Sheraton and cash and carry. Yes, you can, but you need to be able to process it. A lot of the meat that we buy here is good for minced meat, but if you want to use it for steak, then it's mostly different. If you want to use it for the parts, it's different. So a lot of those meats you buy in the open market, you can't really use them for steaks because they're not going to be soft, except you age the beef and buy a particular beef. You have to be able to age it at about 0 degrees for about 1 week before you can make it steak quality. So depending on the cuts you are looking at, you have to buy. Salisu Abudu, I would like to commend the second presenter for his experience. You have highlighted much of the marketing of live animals. I think the major challenge is marketing on the basis of visual appraisal and selling on the basis of kilogram. Well, the problem in Nigeria is the fact that we don't have standards yet. If you go to the market, you go to the butcher and he will tell you, I want to buy meat. Okay, give me this meat, and you haggle with him and do that. But if you go to ShopRite or you go to Next Cash and Carry, you sell meat there by the kilo. So that is really where you have a choice. I'm sorry, these questions are flying away. I cannot. Abubakar Ali says, please, this is a substantial part of the presentation. Could you share this recording? Victor Olori, excellent foresight. And we are missing just one thing, which is critical for. We are missing just one thing. This is, my goodness, this thing is just flipping out. I don't know, is there a problem?
No, actually, sir, I'm just dismissing the ones you've answered already. So the ones you see are the ones you haven't attended to yet. So you can just go
on. I think I've answered the question from Adeolu. So let me take someone from Victor. Let me take a question from let me see. I think can you elaborate more? Could you please take this slide? So please, I'm a beginner. What is the age of the bull? Which of the best breeds are for steaks? Like I said, all these beefs, all these. I think you've deleted one of the questions from Victor. I was trying to answer. When you talk about the best breed for steaks, basically quite a lot of the Nigerian cattle are good for steaks, but very bad for milk. But the question is how you process the beef. When you slaughter beef, you need to be able to age it at 0 degrees for at least a week if you're going to be doing steaks. So that's really not an issue. So in Nigeria, it's a question of how you prepare the beef breeds. But abroad, there are beefs that you have, such as the Angus, which are bred for beef already. And, it's always ready to go for beef. But in Nigeria, you need to age before to get the quality. So, but those steaks that are good for beef steaks, we don't really have them here in Nigeria. That's why you need to grain feed some of these cattle for about 2 or 3 weeks and prepare them for steaks, if that is what you really want. So it's the feeding also that is very important. Victor Olori, he says, we're missing one thing which is critical for sustainability and profitability. The genetic improvement of the breeds locally to enhance biological efficiency, growth, and adoption. What is the plan for this? Yes. As the earlier speaker had said from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, it's important that you get semen. Even if you get the right semen with the existing local breeds and you breed them with this, within one generation, you can begin to get that efficiency. So what they're saying is that in order for you to start, if you want to have, you can start a business using local markets and still doing local, but you need to set up a breeding program to be able to improve the quality of your meat and to be able to improve the performance of your cattle. Because as we've said earlier, most cattle here are about 250 kg and it takes 3 years. But abroad, other cattle with better breeds, within a year and a half, you have taken them to market with and they're over 250. So breeding is very important. Sarijo Salisu says he wants to partner to establish one so people can believe it can work. Yes, we're open to partnership and showing you that this thing can work because we've done it. It's tried and tested. For us, the only problem we have is capital. Capital is the limiting factor. So if you have land and if you have financing, there's a lot we can help you out with. So you can get in touch with Farida and she'll put you in touch with us. Does the Fulani cattle herder have a role in this consortium? Yes. The Fulani cattle herder is a supplier of cattle and a breeder. So it's part of the value chain. If the Fulani cattleman can be taught to breed the right type of cattle, then it helps. I go to the markets in Potaskum and Niadua and people bring in cattle there. But you see, it's still a very traditional market. So everybody, it's not that you're bringing cattle there, all the cattle come there and you have to negotiate with each individual person that owns that cattle to be able to load your trailer. So if I want to buy a trailer load of cattle, I have an agent there who I'll call and say, look, I need this breed and I need that breed. So he will negotiate with the individual person. I'll have to send him money and then he will now have to pay off each individual person. So we need to improve the way they work so that a Fulani man understands the standard. He brings his cattle, they weigh it, he puts it through the system in the market, and then he gets his money, it's done. But people enjoy the market. It's still very traditional. It's quite exciting when you go there. But sometimes you don't want to do that every time because it can be a waste of time. Because, you know, you need to, it takes a while. So you need an agent who will help you buy the right kind of cattle, get the right kind of weight, and then you bring those cattle in and then you put it there. So yes, the Fulani herdsman is a supplier. And that's what we're saying, that let them use their skills and let them teach them orientation of how to get the right breeds that we require. So that even if they're not, they're not going to feed the cattle to market with, they can help with the breeding of the cattle for the feedstock for the meat. So they'll breed the cattle, they'll get the cattle ready, and about 6-7 months or 8-9 months, they bring the cattle to market and sell. So that would be a good business for them. So they don't need to be roaming around a lot more. And they already have those sort of skills that they can bring to bear. So very important.
Can I ask a quick one?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you mentioned standards and the fact that there's not enough awareness about standards. Is that under standards organization the responsibility to create the awareness of standards, international standards, or even the...
No. It's through, like I said, everything is controlled by the state. So there are no written standards at the moment. You know, so everything is controlled by the state in terms of each state has a different meat edict. But in terms of breeding standards and all those sorts of things, we don't really have too much. Maybe the gentleman from the Ministry of Agri can shed more light, but a lot of all these guys are not, they're not under any regulation or any control. So, you know, so that's really where the issue is.
So NAFTA only deals with processed added
yes,
value.
Yes.
And then standards organization doesn't deal with animals. So I guess
no.
Ministry of Agri, right?
No. It's Agri. It's all Agri at the state level. It's the Ministry of
Standards. Yes, the state.
It's the Ministry of Agri at state level that is handling it. So at each state. So that is really where you look at. Kasim, go ahead, please.
Okay, second question has to do with what happened in Kwara. Their project for bringing in South African breed animals, and the farmers came and there was a lot of fanfare, but somehow something went wrong. Is that because of politics, or is it because of the business or the breed just wasn't right or something?
Yeah, it's politics. I mean, they started out and they were breeding the cattle. There was nothing wrong with the cattle, but they could make more money elsewhere in terms of grain. And they still have their milk. They're still doing milk in Kwara. They still have some cattle, but they're more into growing stuff now, you know. So because, you know, they didn't really have a way into how to work with the beef. But yes, they just brought breed and they crossed it. So they've done a successful breeding program. So if you want to raise cattle, you can actually buy from them, but they've decided not to go into that because the feed costs are becoming expensive and they rather sell their stuff, and they've gone into chicken processing, which is doing very well for them.
Oh, thank
you. So they follow the market operation. That's what they've done.
Thank you.
Mukhtar Dodo, I appreciate the private sector part. Will your consortium be involved in the entire value chain? No, we are just providing, we're helping everybody to decide on which way they have. What we're doing with the consortium is to be able to show people that this business is profitable and to be able to convince the central bank to be able to give money to every part of things. Kasimu Karifugabe said, but even when you've got semen, you find local cattle cannot deliver because of size of weight. Yes, you need to know, you cannot go and bring a massive Brahma cattle semen and put it in a, you have to be very careful how you know what sort of things you're bringing in. You have to know the right breed to cross. So you need to talk to experts. They'll already tell you from day one that, you know, this cannot happen and that can happen. So that is pretty clear. So you have to be very careful. Says, if an investor wants to go to intensive cattle feedlot production, can he get licensed to import improved lines from Europe rather than semen? You can import your initial stock, but mostly the only stock you import directly live is your grandparent stock for breeding. Bringing in any other stock for commercial production is not cost effective. I believe the National Institute of Animal Science is a regulatory agency. I don't even know them, so maybe you can direct the question to the gentleman from the Ministry of Agriculture. So I think, can I operate an outgrower? I'll need a list of contacts of these major buyers or razor there. Yes, outgrowers are the best thing to do. There are many people, including master meats, that will take the cattle off you if they're of the best quality. That's never a problem. Does aging at freezing temperatures improve meat quality? So freezing destroys beef quality. If you're going to age meat to cut for steaks, you have to maintain it at exactly 0 degrees. It mustn't go below 0. It mustn't get to freezing. Otherwise, it's a different product entirely. You know, so you don't want to, by the time if you have a steak that you have made and then you freeze the steak, then it's a different ballgame entirely. When you defrost it, then you can use it. But if you're aging beef, then you just maintain it at 0 because you are tenderizing the beef. So that's the big question there. So, okay, we have somebody has given us a response here. Muniat Hamid has told us that the Nigerian Institute of Animal Science are the ones with the mandate of the standards, but their activities are slightly slow. So thank you, Muniat, for that correction. I think more or less I've taken all the questions. There are no more questions here. So if that is the case, then I think we can begin to wrap up.
Thank you so much, Tilewa. You have really outperformed our expectations. This is so exciting. I think everybody is now going to try to digest everything because there's a lot of information in 2 hours. We will be sharing the recording. So for those who want to start listen all over again, maybe take notes because we went quite quickly. We'll be sharing the recording. You can have an opportunity to do that. We also have our website. We'll post the YouTube presentation on our website, so you can go through that as well. We have previous presentations, poultry, fish, some other interesting topics on agribusiness that you might be interested in. So just check our website. That's www.iproduceafrica.com. I wish to say thank you before I hand over to Farida to do the final close. massive thanks to both Hakeem and Tilewa. It's really interesting, exciting, and we will try and follow up, come up with another session will include the central bank, because financing is key, just like you said. And if we can get them to speak about their own intervention and how people can access finance, that would be really interesting. There's also the Cattle Rearers Association. We would like maybe to bring them in. That's the Fulani herdsmen, traditional ones they call them, but they do have associations, and they've also got quite a lot, I think, to say. So perhaps we'll have a part 2 of this to bring the central bank and the Fulani Association, Cattle Rearers Association. So that should be coming soon. So watch this space. And yes, so Farida, thank you. And I also want to acknowledge Habib. Habib is our IT expert who does all this for us. And I know you IT people are behind the scenes. They're usually not acknowledged. Thank you so much, Habib. We really appreciate everything you've done. And for everybody who's joined, thanks again for 2 hours, taking out 2 hours to listen to us. Thank you so much. Farida, over to you to close.
Okay, I don't know, sir, is it possible, can you spare 4 minutes before the closing to answer a couple of more questions? Is it possible, or?
Yeah, we can take more questions if you want me to do that.
Okay, we just have 3 participants who raised up their hands, so maybe we'll just open the floor for them to speak quickly. We have Mudathir. Please, Habib, can we unmute him?
Good.
I think he's still on mute. Okay,
Yes.
or could you just type, please, the question, since we're not able to.
Who else do you have that wants to speak quickly before
We have Austin.
Okay.
Okay, Sirajo is here. Thank you, Sirajo, for joining us.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. And Haji Aisha, thank you for inviting me. I actually asked a question which the presenter read half of it. I was asking, are they only into the provision of consultancy services, or they have a practical business? If not, our bank is willing to partner with them and establish a practical one so that people can believe it can work. That is one. Number 2 is also to quickly pass on information that yes, we don't have central bank here, but even if they are here, they don't directly go into financing. They have to actually partner with a commercial bank. And for anyone that is here and interested in having a good business and you are committed, because we want to partner with people that are actually committed to this business so that we can work together. My name is Sirajo Salisu and I'm the managing director of Jaiz Bank. Not only the managing director, this is something I personally have passion, because my PhD is actually on agricultural economics. And that is why when the presenter was talking, it just reminded me as if I was in class taking lectures. So please, people can take advantage of this, reach out to the secretariat and let's see what we can do together. And we can reach out to Central Bank on behalf of anybody that has an interesting proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the presentation. And I think that Jaiz Bank also, we must say, is a pioneer, and they have pioneered what you would call the sort of sukuk banking, and it's a banking whereby they are non-interest, so they partner with you actually. And for them to partner with you, they must know, as he said, you are viable and you are serious. So I think next time I'm in Abuja, I will definitely find time to come and see you, and I'll get in touch with you through Aisha, because there are many opportunities, even within just organizing those traders within Kara markets in Lagos, Miadua, and Port Harcourt. If we can create a triangle to be able to support those markets, I think we can start from there, and we can definitely help you show that this definitely works. So I look forward to that. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
MD Jaiz, we really appreciate your presence, and we're encouraged about what you've just said now, because I think this is the missing link, is the financing. We can have all the wonderful ideas and all the passion that you like, but if you don't have financing, it will be fruitless. So yes, we're very excited. And perhaps when we have our next webinar, we can invite JAIS to come in so that they can explain how they can come in and provide the financing that is needed for those serious people. So yes, we will definitely speak with you as well. And Tulewa would like you to please help us with this as well, as being that you're a banker and you have already got practical experience. So after this, I'll get in touch. Thank you so much. I don't know if Mudassir is still on and if he can speak now. It's already 1 o'clock. We don't want to take any more time. Mudassir, if you're there, just quickly speak. Otherwise, Farida, we have to close now. Thank you.
Mudassir, you have to unmute your mic yourself from your own side.
I think Mudassir works with Central Bank. I know it would be nice to hear from him, but unfortunately he's not either listening or not able to answer. I think we have to close because it's already 1 o'clock and people have things to do. So we will we'll invite Central Banks, JAIS, everybody again on the financing issue, because this is very critical. Farida, could you close then?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Adetilewa, and thank you for your very fantastic presentation. Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you soon for our next webinar coming up. Just keep in touch and make sure you check your mails for our updates. Thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you, Tulewa. Bye-bye. Thank you, Hakeem. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.